We're going to review for our test on Thursday. We're going to start with looking at some of the vocabulary. A lot of this vocabulary can be found in your formula chart on the front of your journal. So standard form, point slope, slope intercept, and the slope formula, these are all on your formula chart. So slope is, in fact, rise over run, the change in y over change in x. So we should have B here. Our slope formula is C. The x-intercept, remember, is where it crosses the x-axis. So we're going to have D. The y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis, G. Direct variation is just, it's when it crosses through the origin, so the B is 0. So this is going to be E. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, your favorite. Point slope is going to be h, and then standard form is f. When we look at direct variation, we need to pay attention to some of the key things they tell us, and we need to remember direct variation is y over x. So if x is 2 and y is 210, find the value of y when x is 5. So one of the things that we need to do here is cross multiply. You will, of course, have your calculator. And then divide. And when we do that, we get that y is in fact 525. Now, if we are looking for the constant of variation, okay, that is our k, but we can also use it as m. So you could put these 2 points in list and spreadsheets, or y over x, if it is a direct variation, will also be your slope. So 210 divided by 2 is in fact 55. But you can do list and spreadsheets. Find the slope of the line that passes through 6, 11, and 9, 26. So you can use list and spreadsheets here, or you can in fact do your labels. And you can use your slope formula that we talked about up at our vocabulary. So letter C, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2, 26 minus y1, 11 over x2, 9 minus x1, 6. You could also put that in your calculator if needed. 15 over 3. 15 over 3 is 5. Or you could also write 5 over 1. If we're looking at this graph, altitude of a bird over time, find the rate of change. So rate of change is just another word for slope. Do pay attention to the scale here, because these y's are counting by 5s. And the x's are counting by 1s. So we know that just by looking at this picture, it is in fact decreasing. So the altitude decreases by, and I've got a nice pretty point right here, and we have the y-intercept. So when we count, we're not really counting down 2 because it's counting by 5. So we're really counting down 10 and over 3. So my slope is a negative 10 over 3. Now this says it is decreasing by, so we can write 10 over 3 because decreasing does in fact indicate negative. If you wrote negative 10 over 3 here, I think that would be okay. There won't be any discrepancies in the test. Over here we have a table. So you could, in fact, if you had your calculator, you could use list and spreadsheets. You could also do x1, y1, and x2, y2. So I'm going to use that method just because it's easier to visualize. So 6 minus 3 over 8 minus 2, so 3 over 6 is 1/2. If you did it in list and spreadsheets, it would give you 0.5. So make sure you can comfortably change a fraction out of a decimal. This one is also asking for the rate of change, but in order to do that, we're going to have to make sure that we can change this to y equals. So we need to get that y all by itself. So in order to do that, this is a positive 3x. We're going to subtract it because that's the opposite. And now to get the y by itself, we're multiplying by a negative 2. So the opposite or the inverse is to divide by a negative 2. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I have positive y. 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. And a negative 3 divided by a negative 2 is a positive 3 over 2. And since it's only asking for the rate of change, my answer here is just 3 over 2. Slope does not have an x on it. It's just the number in front of the x. If we're going to change an equation to standard form, probably starting with lists and spreadsheets will be easier for you. I don't have the capability to put my calculator on the video. So I will show you all the steps and then I'll change colors for where, if you use lists and spreadsheets, that would come in. If you're gonna use this the long way, 21 minus 15, and again, I'm just doing the slope formula here. 5 minus 2, 6 over 3 gives me a slope of 2. And I'm going to do point slope form with this 215. So y minus y1 equals m. X minus x1, we would need to distribute. And this is in those folding notes that we did. 2 times x is 2x, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And now I need to get my y all alone, so I'm going to move my 15. It was a negative, so now I'm going to add it. So y equals 2x plus 11. And if you were to do list and spreadsheets, this, if you did 413, this would be where you would start. Now, standard form has x and y on the same side. A is positive, and there's no fractions or decimals. So if I need to move my x to the other side, it happens to be a positive. So I'm going to subtract 2x. And I cannot put x with y. So I'm just going to bring it down to x plus y equals 11. And in standard form, the number in front of x has to be positive. Right now it's a negative, so I'm going to multiply everything by a -1 because a negative times a negative is a positive. It doesn't change my value, just my sign. A negative times a positive is a negative. You don't have to write that one if you don't want to. And a negative times a positive is a negative. So now we have it in standard form. This next one is the same process. So I'm going to start with my slope. So I'm going to do, well, let me label these first. Let's start with that. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. So I have -6 minus 3, Y2 minus Y1, over 2 minus a -4, which is x2 minus x1. And I know a negative right here, this is going to become a big plus. So I have -9 over 6, which simplifies to -3 over 2. I'm going to go ahead and use this first point. So y minus 3 equals -3 over 2. X minus a -4 makes this a positive. So we're going to distribute y minus 3 equals -3 over 2x. You can put this in your calculator if you need to. A negative times a positive is a negative, and 3 over 2 times 4 is 6. Now I need to get my y by itself, so I'm going to add my 3 because it was a minus. Got to do the opposite. Y equals negative 3 over 2x minus 3. Now, if you did list and spreadsheets, this is where you would come in. Now, standard form again cannot have a fraction. So we have to multiply our whole equation by the denominator to make it go away. So 2 times y is 2y. 2 times a negative 3 over 2 is just a negative 3. Please don't forget your x. Be careful with your signs. And 2 times a negative 3 is a negative 6. Second step, x and y need to be on the same side. This is a minus 3x, so I'm going to add 3x. I cannot put x and y together, so 3x plus 2y equals negative 6. My number in front of x is positive, so I don't have to do that last step. When you multiply by your denominator, it doesn't matter if your fraction is negative or not, just multiply by the positive number. Here you can also do list and spreadsheets to write your equation. I'm going to go ahead and show the long way. So change in y over change in x. So this is adding 14. And this is adding 2. So 14 over 2. You could also do change in y, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick this point. Here's my slope. I've got my point, so I'm going to say y minus, again, minus a negative 64 becomes a positive, equals 7, parentheses, x minus a negative 9 is a positive. I'm going to distribute 7x plus 63. To move my 64 over, I'm going to subtract it. So y equals 7x minus 1. So I need to figure out which of these answer choices simplify to be that. Well, I know that it can't be C and it can't be D because those have negative slopes. So I definitely do not want to pick that. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute here. So there's my 7x. There's my 63. 9 times 7 is 63. Minus 64. Well, that looks exactly like what I did here, which is, in fact, a negative 1. So my answer will be A, because on this bottom one, when I distribute, I do get my 7x, but then I get minus 63 plus 64, which is a positive 1, and we wanted a negative 1. Which of the following are true? So we can do slope here. Desmos is going to be very helpful for you on this one. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. You could also use list and spreadsheets to find your slope here. 7 minus a negative 5 over negative 10 minus 14. This becomes a plus. So I have 12 over negative 24 is a negative 1/2. And this is positive, so it's not going to be that. I would suggest definitely list and spreadsheets, because when you do that, it will tell you also, if you do 413, it's going to tell you your equation is y equals 1/2 or positive 0.5 x plus 2. And when you put this into Desmos, you can just tap on the x and y intercepts. My graph over here does not go high enough, so I'm just going to sketch a little graph for you over here so you can kind of see. 14, negative 5 would be down here. Negative 10, positive 7 would be up here. Pretend that was a straight line. And when we do that, you can see -2, +1 is way down here, okay? If I was to draw my lines, I could see that, in fact, it goes through an x-intercept of 4. But again, Desmos is going to be your best bet on something like that once you have the equation. So you can just tap the x and y intercepts, and that is going to be embedded on your test. Number 18, you're going to have to change this to y equals mx plus b so that you can, in fact, graph it, which is what we had done earlier on the front on number 13. So we're going to, this is a positive 5x, so we're going to make it a negative. And you cannot put an x with a regular number. Now, when you bring this down, please, please, please remember to put the negative in front of the 6. And then to get that y alone, we're going to have to divide everything by the -6. So we get y equals a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So now I'm very easily can come over here. I can see the slope is not true because it's not negative. We can also see, well, it says y-intercept, so the y should be a number. This says -5, which is way down here, and that's a +5, so it's not that one either. If I was to count my slope, rise 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can see that my x-intercept or my 0 is a +6, and this says negative. So this happens to be none of the above. When we look at Mindy's balance on number 19, again, pay attention to the scale, and we're only talking about the x-intercept. And we can see down here, here's my x-intercept, 9, 0, where my x is weeks and my y is money. So at 9 weeks, there is 0 money. So A says the balance was $450 when she stopped making deposits. Well, that is a true statement, but that is about the y-intercept, and they're asking about the x-intercept. So we need to make sure we pay attention to what that question is asking. The balance decreased by $100 each week. Well, that's not even the slope because the slope is 50. So that's definitely not true. The balance reached 0 after 9 weeks. Well, that's what we have right here. And the equation can be represented by y equals 50x plus 450. No. If it was -50, then yes, but still that has nothing to do with that x-intercept. So make sure you're answering the question being asked. On number 20, we can start at this coordinate and count our rise over our run. It says, what is the 0? Remember, that is x-intercept. So I'm going to come back up to my graph on number 18. I used a red line earlier. I'll use a blue line now. -4, -6 is right here. And the slope was 3/4. So rise 3, run 4. Now that's a y-intercept, not an x-intercept. So we're going to keep going. 1, 2, 3 again. Over 1, 2, 3, 4. And there, in fact, is my x-intercept of 4, 0. Last question. Just make sure you're reading carefully and you're paying attention to your signs. What is the 0? So again, 0 is x-intercept of the graph. Here is where it crosses the x-axis. This is my x, this is my y. So 6, 0. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please come into tutoring.